Welcome to the latest episode of the Circle podcast. Get ready to dive into the electrifying world of restorative justice as we explore its dynamic relationship with post-secondary school students and educators. In this latest episode, we're breaking boundaries and sparking conversations that ignite change. Join us as we unravel the layers of restorative justice, exploring how it transforms classrooms into vibrant hubs of understanding and growth. From fostering empathy to cultivating accountability, we're uncovering the power dynamics that shape educational landscapes. With our expert guest, Cynthia Booth, and with an insightful discussion, get ready to change conventional wisdom and embrace fresh perspectives. The Circle podcast is your platform for innovation, empowerment, and inspiration. Tune in now and let's embark on this exhilarating journey together. Sit back, relax, and let's get started.
Welcome back to the Circle. It's Megan. Today I am joined by the wonderful and lovely Cynthia Booth. Unfortunately, Pina isn't here today. She is unable to join us. She's got 1,000,001 things on her plate. So she sends her grievances and she wishes she was here. But today I am so excited to be sitting down beside Cynthia. She works at Cambrian College, which is actually the college that I attended and graduated from just a year and a half ago. Seems like so much longer. So without further ado, Cynthia, welcome to the Circle.
Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm quite excited to have a conversation about restorative justice.
And we are excited to listen to your takes. I want to get to know a little bit about you. I know as much as I know, but the listeners listening may not know about who you are or what you do over at Cambrian. So I'm going to pass the mic on over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do.
For sure. Thank you for that, Megan. So I've been at Cambrian now for about 18 years. And before coming into Cambrian, I actually worked in Southern Ontario in our corrections areas. So I'll talk a little bit more about restorative justice and that passion that emerged a long time ago. Here at Cambrian, I'm right now the interim educational developer. And basically what that means is I work in our Cambrian College Teaching and Learning Innovation Hub. And it's a hub that's designed for anyone who teaches at our college to help them grow their teaching skills and help them develop their courses and their classes. So it's a really great opportunity for me to network with faculty and hear about what they're doing across the college and share with them tips, tricks, and techniques that I use. I also get an opportunity once in a while to plug trauma-informed and restorative practices when I can. When I am not busy being the educational developer, I am also a faculty member here at the college, which means that I teach in one of our programs. Sometimes I teach in many programs. Typically it's the Justice Cluster, and I teach in the Community and Justice Services program. Prior to jumping into this secondment as an educational developer, I was the coordinator for the Community and Justice Services program. And most people are like, what is that? And that basically means people who want to support and rehabilitate persons in conflict with the law, also known as corrections. So other than that, around here, I like to also do some suicide intervention training, and I train many different groups of students as well as support the community with some other work as well related to suicide prevention.
You are a very accomplished woman. Thank
you.
Very accomplished. I'm thinking on your resume, it's probably about 8 pages worth of training and education experience on top of 100 other things. So you mentioned that you educate other educators.
So Megan, you're basically telling me I'm old?
No, I'm saying that you're incredibly educated.
Thank you for that compliment.
So you educate other educators. So if you can divulge into that just a little bit and tell me what it is that you're teaching the educators over at Cambrian College.
So when a new faculty member joins us, whether that's full-time or on a contract basis, what we like to do is we like to give them some teaching and learning experiences to help them better adapt to our classrooms. And because they come as experts in the field, they don't always come as expert educators. So we give them some what we call pedagogy or teaching theory to help them better understand how is it that I can engage my class? What does a lesson plan look like? And why would I do a lesson plan in a particular way? We help them develop their course outlines and their course syllabuses, develop effective, authentic assessments so that they're measuring student skills, meeting our objectives and our outcomes set out by the ministries.
Do you make the difficult stuff a little bit easier for them to navigate?
Absolutely, that's everything that we do in the hub. It's all about we are a resource to them. They can come in, and whether they want to come in person or they want to reach out to us virtually, it's all about making their lives easier to navigate through our learning management system and all of the different computer platforms that we have here as well.
Yeah, and that can definitely have a ripple effect. So, of course, I don't have experience at Cambrian as a faculty member, but I have experience as a student. Specifically during COVID, I remember watching my professors really kind of struggle to get a grasp of this new learning environment that they'd never been a part of. I had no idea that they had resources that were available to them to be able to assist in navigating the new platform. Um, Interestingly enough, actually, I will probably consult you on this. SDRJ is launching a new program, the Legal Navigation Program.
Right.
Navigation obviously being at the key.
Yep.
And of course, you are an invaluable resource to us, being a wonderful and valued board member, which we'll touch upon in just a minute. But being able to lean on you as another community member to enable us to help the youth and their families that are trying to navigate complicated systems is so incredibly important. That was the whole reason that we began that program, even to begin with, was we had youth and their families coming to us saying, this is really difficult and I don't know where to go. And I'm scared and I'm overwhelmed. Either myself or my kid has just been charged and we don't even know which way to turn. We don't know who to talk to. Where do I get a lawyer? What's legal aid? It's a very complicated and almost sometimes convoluted process. So we will definitely be leaning on you for that. So like I mentioned, you are an incredible and valued member on our board of directors. So she attends all of our board meetings, which are always so wonderful and great. And I love being able to see everybody's faces. What led you to our board? How did you get involved in the world of restorative justice and then Sudbury District Restorative Justice?
So I'll go back then a little bit back in time when it comes to the interest in restorative justice. When I was working in Toronto, I was working with a group of young people, too young to be charged with criminal activities. So under the YCGA, of course, we can't work with people that are like 9 and 10. But there were ideas about how do we take something that's effective with them to be able to help them to be more mindful of the choices that they're making. And so restorative circles naturally fit the bill because it gave an opportunity for all voices to be heard, from the person that created the harm, which is usually one of these little people, to the people that they harmed, which is usually another little person or something at school or a family member, to talk about why are you creating this harm, and then how is it being received and impacting. And so those conversations could start to unfold. And really, that ignited the interest for me to become trained in restorative justice and to be a restorative justice conference facilitator. And that sort of began the journey of how can I integrate restorative practices, or even getting people to think about the focus of crime as a violation of the relationship and not just a violation of the law. And so that sort of centered and began my work. And then actually how I came to Sudbury District Restorative Justice was I was trained as a facilitator, and I want to say probably 10, 15 years ago, when Sudbury District Restorative Justice was under different direction and leadership, I was actually a volunteer, and I would do the circles and offer up the support in that way to be able to offer extrajudicial measures and sanctions for our youth in our community. And since then, Sudbury District Restorative Justice has evolved. My time wasn't able to permit staying involved. And so in the last year and a half to 2 years, I was taking a little bit of a leave away from my teaching here. And I took a professional development leave to really immerse myself not only in restorative justice practices, but also trauma-informed practices, because we also know that the reason that many people who are in conflict with the law is because they have experienced trauma, and trauma that they haven't been able to necessarily work through, understand. And crime is one of the indicators of trauma, and also a reason why we commit crimes. So really, it was a great opportunity for me to better understand, to be able to present that over to our students in our justice cluster. And in my investigative work, I came back to Sudbury Restorative Justice, and Jackie was like, hey, would you like to be a board member? And I was like, absolutely, I'd love to be a board member. And so we rekindled that connection again.
That's amazing. So you were around for Janie's time then?
I was actually around even before Janie's time.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Wow. So she's been SDRJ longer than we've been SDRJ. I love that. I love that you were able to come full circle.
Yep.
I think what's cool to me most though is you were able to take that step back from your professional life and take a professional leave and be able to explore and expand your own knowledge on restorative justice and on trauma-informed practice.
Yeah.
So before we started recording this podcast, everyone, as usual, I'm a chatterbox. I never stop talking. Cynthia and I were discussing how I tend to be a very knowledge finder type of person, is I'm constantly seeking out knowledge. I admire that. I admire that you were able to go and do that for yourself. And then you're able to take those skills, which is actually what was going to lead me into my next question, is in the either the faculty you're teaching or the classes that you teach or in some of the curriculum work that you do. How have you enabled restorative justice practices or been able to educate about them?
Well, one of the things that we know, and I'll use it as one catapult or leaping point, when we think about both restorative justice and we think about the idea of trauma-informed practices, it's in order for any learning to happen, there needs to be a safe space. And that's part of what you do in restorative justice, is create that safe space where everyone is mutually respected, where everyone's voice is heard, where you give power to all parts of the party. It's not one person that has power to make decisions. Everyone has power to make decisions. And so here at Cambrian, as part of the orientation for our faculty, we really talk about the need for safer spaces for our students, which is critical and underpins that. That's a broader underpinning. Philosophically, everything I do in my classes and in my teaching naturally come from that perspective or that place of how can we be restorative, in that how can we reduce the harms of conflict? It doesn't have to be crime. It can be conflict too. And how do we build relationships? So I'm really a big proponent of collaborative learning with our students. And in my students' curriculum, they have naturally embedded restorative justice elements. And in the past, we've brought, your crew in at Sudbury District Restorative Justice to bring to light what's happening in the real world. And that is always a natural fit. In addition to that, in the program I teach, Community and Justice, we do everything from a trauma-informed perspective and restorative perspective. So if there's a conflict in our class, we circle up and we talk about, what's the impact to the crew as a whole? What's the impact to the individual? What's the impact to me as a faculty member? So we really do our best to model what we hope that they're going to see in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really like that visual of all the students coming together. Um, so when I was entering the world of restorative justice, and again, still being in school,
Hmm.
I was in a completely different program. And now
Hmm.
I'm kind of sad that I didn't go down the justice route. Because when a conflict came up in our classes, when we were for the 6 months that I was able to actually be in school,
Right.
it was more, you're adults, you can deal with it amongst yourselves. There wasn't a mediator, say, that sits in the middle to discuss, okay, what's going on? What's the issue? Who's been harmed? How can we resolve the harm? How can we create harmony? But none of that happened. None of that happened. And I had no idea anything about restorative justice or, circles of support and things like that. So
Yeah.
I absolutely love that you're instilling that in your students in particular, because
Yeah.
you know that in the long run, it's very similar to our programming here at SDRJ, where it's going to create a lasting ripple effect.
In addition to that, when they move into the workplace and they're having conversations with their colleagues, they can have those conversations from a place of respect and mutuality of a common goal, as opposed to adversarially, which our criminal justice system is sort of grounded in, us against them mentality, to go, okay, we have a common goal. How do we get to that common goal together? And that means sitting down and working through the relationship. And I think, if I've taken nothing else, if I were to look back on my professional development leave, and it would be that relationships are far more significant in our workplaces than people realize. And having the skills to effectively navigate conflict is something that we aren't taught as a general rule. And whether you grow up in a family that does resolve conflict well or doesn't resolve conflict well, you can always expand your toolbox to resolve conflict. So another piece of the puzzle for us is, whether it's across our justice cluster, we really focus on conflict resolution with our students because we know how significant and important it's going to be for their skill set.
Well, of course, and especially considering the field that they're going into.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, the majority of the students that are going into a justice-based program are coming at it from what we would call the older style of justice, right? Colonial justice, where it's black and white, there's yes, there's no, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So coming in and having you be able to provide them with this fresh perspective of, hold on, wait a minute, there's a whole lot to consider right now. When they do graduate and they eventually leave Cambrian and they enter workforces, there will be
Yep.
a time where they will be educating people, and those people will educate people, and those people will educate people on
Yep.
restorative justice practices and how to be, an integral part of a team. Because you're right, those relationships that you're forming during your professional life, whether in school or in the workplace, are incredibly important. They're important for networking, communication, everything in between. And it helps you be a better human, in my opinion. It just makes you a nicer person, and it makes conflict resolution a little bit easier.
Absolutely. And contrary to popular belief, it is amazing the students that we have coming in now to our programs, how much more cultured they are in trauma and aware that there are underpinnings of what is putting a person in conflict with the law. And it's interesting because there's greater moral dilemmas and ethical dilemmas because the law says this, but the reason it's happening is because of all of these mitigating factors. So now, why would we apply the law in the same way? And so restorative justice, I think, offers that possibility of hope for not only a stronger criminal justice system that meets the needs of both the person in conflict with the law, but the person harmed by that conflict, but our community in general. And I think students really grasp onto that concept because they, like all of us here at Sudbury District, are all about the idea of a little bit more optimism.
Exactly, because that's what we need. especially in a time that's as tumultuous as right now. That
Yep.
makes me really happy to hear that, the students that are coming in now and entering the workforce are a little bit more empathetic, a little more understanding, and coming
Yep.
out trauma informed. Because again, it doesn't just impact the professional life, it can also impact your personal life. Like we teach our kids, you never know what's going on. You never get the whole story. You're only going to get one piece.
Yep.
So, treat everybody with love and with kindness. And, especially when it comes to conflict resolution, sit down, talk it out. We provide you with the strategies. And I find our programming is working really well with youth right now, again, because of
Mhm.
the society that we're living in right now. A lot of people are becoming more sympathetic and empathetic and understanding, and then reaching out for that knowledge to get more education and to see that there are so many other possibilities rather than a yes or a no, a right answer or a wrong. There's always that in between that has to be investigated. So that makes me so happy to hear.
And I think that's one of the strengths of the work that is done with the organization, because at the end of the day, the foundation is about education and awareness building. And when we educate one individual, like you said, it carries on and it has that ripple effect. We also know in our industry that we need to plant seeds. And the knowledge that we plant with individuals may not resonate right away, but as time goes on, it fosters and blooms into something much bigger. And so we need to have trust in that process. And that's one of the things that really kind of magnetized me or gravitated me back to Sudbury District Restorative Justice, because it's that belief in the significance and the power of education.
Absolutely. And I know Kina's not here, but I wanted to shout her out because she's the youngest member of our team, for anybody who may not know. And she brought such a fresh perspective into our programming. So when I first started here, this was just shortly before I graduated. I was hired on as placement, and then I ended up full time after graduation.
Right.
And, watching the shift when Pina came in with the programming was huge, because she has that integral knowledge and this connection with our youth that I've never seen ever before. She's so good with them because she understands that the way that they work is very similar to the way that she was. She's able to form this bond and this connection. The kids are becoming more receptive. They're listening. And you're 100% right. It may not happen overnight. Again, let's keep in mind these are teenagers, okay? It's really hard to convince a teenager to do anything. So it's not going to be an immediate reaction, but she's planting the seeds. So even within a year, she's seen youth that she dealt with last year come full circle to this year. And it's like, whoa, that's a completely different kid. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, that's amazing. And you can see she's filled with pride, and she should be. Pina, I know you're listening. You should be very proud of the work that you're doing. And if she was here, she would tell me to stop. Yeah, I'm really happy to see that these youth are in such a space now that they're surrounded by this education and adults who are willing to discuss and willing to listen, because, we got to listen to what the youth are telling us. We really do. They're the future.
Yep, absolutely. And they know much more than we give them credit for.
Mm-hmm.
They are quite
Oh,
self-aware.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Give them a chance to let their voice be heard, and it's amazing the things that they will come up with.
Well, that's what we try to do. In
Mhm.
our boardroom, actually, in the office, we have a beautiful chalkboard. And in it, it says that this is a safe and brave space, which just indicates that it's a safe space for kids to be brave in. We want to hear from them. A lot of times, people will look at our programming and be like, oh, it's just, they're being deferred. It's so they don't get a charge. Not really. That's not the way that we format our programming. That's not the way that we look at it. This is an opportunity for us to have a conversation. We don't talk down, we don't talk at, we speak with. We form that connection. So once we're into, the meat and potatoes of the actual programming, we've already developed this rapport and we've gotten that information from the youth we're working with. And we're like, okay, that's not going to click with them if I form it this way. But because I know them at this point, this is how I'm going to frame it. We're able to make those connections. And then they become lifelong. And then they change their attitude when they're at school. Their grades go up. They tend to be a lot happier. They're not in conflict nearly as much. And then when conflict does come up, they're able to, handle it. That creates healthier adults who then have healthier, happier children. We try to stop bad from happening, right? That's the whole point of restorative justice, is to heal the harm from within so it doesn't fester and get worse. So the biggest, most important takeaway, I think, and that's something that you've said, is we need to listen. We need to listen to our youth. We got to hear them. They're talking to us. They're screaming at us. We just got to open our ears and sit down and listen.
Absolutely.
Did you want to add anything else?
Well, I want to add a thank you to you for taking the time to invest in us as board members to be able to share our story. I think it's really powerful and important for us to be able to have this. And Megan, don't kid yourself, you're equally as awesome as Pina. This media relations stuff that you do for us may not be the justice you were thinking about, but it's a huge win for us because you get to use your passion of what you've got in school with your newfound passion of restorative justice to spread the word and bring awareness for people. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Cynthia. That means a lot.
You're welcome.
I never thought, honestly, like if we go back to, me being in Cambrian at the time, graduating and not realizing I'm obsessed with restorative justice. Anything that has to do with restorative justice, I'm right on board. But even if I go back 3 years ago, I never even heard of restorative justice. So I think it's pretty awesome that I get to work for, an organization that lets me meld the two together.
Yep.
And it's been such an awesome time chatting with you. We had a conversation just before we started recording, and I didn't realize how much we had in common, and I love that so much. We are so amazingly lucky to have such a great set of people on our board, honestly. I was going and I was updating our website recently of all the board members, and I'm looking at all of them like, these are some talented freaking people we have here. Hello. And I say to Jackie and Pina all the time, I'm like, we're really lucky. Like our little organization has become so big so quick, and it's amazing and it's wonderful, and it's allowed us to do all of these things. And it just means that the future is bright, not only for us, but for our youth, which I couldn't be happier.
Absolutely. And it means that people have the same values and philosophies that we have at this organization, and they just didn't know that those values and philosophies meant restorative justice. And I think that's how I stumbled upon restorative justice. I'm like, hey, this is me through and through and through. And you said the same thing. This is who I am as an individual. I just didn't know there was this movement called restorative justice.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And hopefully others join our movement too.
I'm sure they will. We've seen lots of action on social media, of course, and I love that. It's so cool to be able to see all of these people who share our passion and like, oh my gosh, you feel the same way we do? Yeah, we do. Come and join the party. Come and listen. So Cynthia, thank you so much for joining me in the circle today. Again, I'm sorry Pina couldn't be here, but she does send her grievances, and we will see you in our next board meeting.
Sounds great. Thank you for your time and inviting me to the circle.
Of course, anytime.